Hi, it's me, Ashley, from the blog Aloe Plum, helping you to DIY everything better. If you've been reading my blog or watching my YouTube channel, you probably know that my husband's an architect and I steal as many of his supplies and techniques as I can. He's trained in designing huge commercial buildings, so he knows his way around some measuring tools. Even though I'm not designing a building, I can steal his tools, techniques, and tips to make my DIY projects even better. I'll show you. Oftentimes when I get an idea for a DIY project, I'll look on Pinterest or YouTube to see if there's already a tutorial. Usually there's something out there, but not exactly what I want, or I find something that's a great inspiration, but there's no pattern. And that's why being able to design your own pattern is key to being able to DIY everything better. Today I'm going to show you my top 5 tools to design and measure out your own patterns for the perfect DIY project. And my first tool is graph paper. Most pads of graph paper will tell you what the measurements are. This one is 4 squares per inch on the front side and 5 squares per inch on the back. That's really helpful when it comes to measuring out my patterns. Really what I use graph paper for the most is just a quick way to measure things out and get straight lines that are parallel and perpendicular to each other. It's so easy. Line your ruler up to the lines in the graph paper and trace. And my second tool, or measuring hack, is an engineer square, or sometimes called a triangle. This is an engineer square. And the name really explains a lot of what it's used for, which is to make things square. This is a great tool to make sure that my lines are perfectly perpendicular to each other and that I have nice right angles when I'm designing a pattern. It also creates a really fast way for me to measure things without having to measure every single part out. I'll show you how that works. Once I've drawn my first perpendicular line, I'm going to take a ruler and measure out how far I want my next line to be. Then instead of having to measure that at multiple points across my line, I'm just going to take my triangle, make sure that it's lined up and square, and draw all the way across. I can double check the measurements, but my 2 parallel lines are going to be perfectly parallel this way. If you don't have a triangle, you can use a simple box or a book with a right angle and get the same effect. I'm using the right angle of this box just as I would the right angle of my triangle. And my lines are still perfectly parallel. And now that we've talked a lot about straight lines and right angles, my third tool for you is a compass. But we're not going to use a compass you buy at the store. If you want to make a really big circle, like for a circle skirt or a tablecloth, you need a really big compass. And the way I get that is by tying a piece of string or yarn to a pencil or pen. This becomes the center of your circle, and you can get any size circle you want. If you know the radius or the diameter of the circle you need, you can cut your piece of yarn to the exact right size, and you don't even need to know how to figure out circumference. And my fourth tool or design hack is a way to use a very simple ruler to split things into equal parts the simple way. If I'm trying to break this rectangle into even parts, but I measure it and it's not a number that's easily divided equally, I can find the number that would be easy to divide equally and simply measure that number out at an angle. I know I can divide 6 inches evenly into 2 parts, so I'm going to make sure my ruler is at 0 on one edge and 6 on the other. That way my 3-inch mark is exactly in the center. I can also double check this by measuring my diagonal at 8 inches. With one edge of my ruler at 0 and the other edge at 8 inches, my center will be at exactly 4 inches. And now it's divided into 2 equal pieces. I can also use this technique to divide it into thirds. This time I will use a number divisible by 3. If I measure my diagonal out at 9 inches, I will make my first mark at 3 inches and my second at 6 inches. This will break my rectangle up into even thirds. And my fifth tool to creating perfect easy patterns, tracing paper. I use tracing paper in a lot of ways when I'm designing a pattern for a project. By drawing on tracing paper, I can draw half of my pattern out, fold it down the middle, flip it over, and trace the other side to get a perfectly symmetrical pattern. Here's an example. I have my tracing paper folded in half, and I'm going to draw out a shirt pattern. Let's say it's for an elf on the shelf. I only need to draw half, and then I'm going to flip my tracing paper over and trace the line to the other side. And now I have a perfectly symmetrical pattern. The other thing I love to use tracing paper for is to modify a pattern I've already created or already purchased. And a side benefit of tracing paper is that it's so flexible and malleable that you can really use it to see if your pattern is going to work before you cut your fabric out. I hope my tips, tools, and measuring hacks make your next DIY project even easier. Make sure to like this video and subscribe to my channel for more ways to do everything better.